flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks again, everybody, for joining us this evening. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll have a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the...
We're just on the regular agenda first, and then we'll do that.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. All 7 of us. Okay, and before we go on to make a motion for the consent agenda, Matt has.
So on the consent agenda, added earlier today under item number 9, approved school nutrition programs agreement. KSDE did send out an alternate version of that agreement today for consideration. So the agreement, the original one just says 2006 or 2026 SNP program agreement. The alternate version has actually Friday's date, and it says alternate after the end of it. The difference is the wording in section K. And the one thing I would need to let the board know with that change, if the board chooses to take the alternate version, then we will need to make sure that any other documents for that agreement, when it comes to the discrimination language, we will have to update that in-house because they're not going to, which we can do that, that's not a problem. Here's the one piece though, when our online enrollment, when students enroll on, or families enroll online, for the free and reduced lunch piece, that's actually a link that goes to the KSDE website, and then they do that electronically, so they fill that information out electronically, and then it gets routed back to us. That when they go to the KSDE site, that form will have the original language on that form. They said we can still use it. If we don't go that route, then we have to use everything paper and pencil, and that would create an undue burden on our food service department to try to do that. And I think we would run the risk of some people not filling it out for some funding stuff.
But it's possible that that would be updated by the time that happens from the USDA, because I was told it should be updated tomorrow from USDA.
So that's different than what I heard. What I heard was that that KSDE would not be able to update because of programming stuff. So I do want to make that clear that there is that piece of it from a just a logistical standpoint of doing it. I mean, we really do need to use that online piece for that. So, but you would be approving, it would be approving the actual language that you so chose here tonight. So questions on that, I did want to point that out because that was a late addition, because I just got that from the State Department when they sent that out. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Thank you.
I'll have a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the alternate language on number 9.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda with the alternate language on number 9. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, so that takes us to Board of Ed acknowledgements. Does anybody have anything you'd like to share?
I actually do. Last weekend I went and viewed the tornado damage down in Plevna.
The what? I'm sorry.
The tornado damage was an F3 that went through Pratt, Stafford, and Reno County.
Okay.
And it took out several farms And one thing that I was visiting one of the last farms, and there was a 16-year-old running the skid steer, and the only break that they took was to go to the FFA convention. So I just wanted to say, and then they mentioned to me that how much it stood out Haley Hines' speech to them. So I wanted to say, first of all, great job on raising a daughter like that, who stood out to a lot of people, and they weren't the only ones who mentioned that speech to me. But also I think it was my sophomore year was your first year teaching, Mr. Hines. And I remember how much you pushed FFA then, and you've really built it into such an amazing program that I think you deserve to have a pat on the back, and I'm very proud of what you built, so.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else before we move on? Okay,
I'll bring up the version.
okay. So whoever would like to go first back there?
And go for the high school. So
Okay.
since school's let out, we've had kids all over. Samantha mentioned the FFA convention. We have quite a large number of FFA members from our school there. Mr. Reed joined us. Darren came out, and as well as a couple of counselors from the school. I volunteered throughout the week at that as well. We've had kids overseas and already back on a trip with Miss Allison and Miss Ward. We've had kids in the state track meet, we've had state baseball going on, and our school is just full of kids every single day, except Fridays. We don't have many kids on Fridays, but with all the summer camps and weights and stuff going on, so it's a really busy time. And the last thing I'd like to spotlight is our graduation rate and the end of the year board report data. Our staff did some really good things with our students again this year, and in terms of the number of kids walking across the stage, it's top notch in Kansas, so I just wanted to thank my staff for that.
Just a quick wrap up, we had one individual state champion, state track, JJ Crawford, won long jump, and one on his last jump, I think he had the foot behind or so, and he increased, so that was pretty good for him. Baseball team didn't fare as well as we hoped, finished up fourth to the eventual state champions, Fort Scott. Like Jeff said, I'd never been to an FFA event, so that was kind of eye-opening for me to go and see that. And yeah, the school is full of kids, and physicals are starting to come in, and we're already starting for next year. So. And Plevna was not my hometown, 6 miles away, and we always went to church there, and so my mom grew up in that church. So yeah, pretty hard to hit.
Just so it's not an awkward order. I just wanted to give a shout out to the kids that did all the work on a mural. If you haven't been through the middle school, they ended the year with it's a really cool mural. They did an awesome job. We spotlighted it on our Facebook page to end the year. And so just wanted to give a shout out to Ms. Kaplinger and those students, because that was really good. It took a lot of work and effort outside of school to get that done. So it was awesome.
Thank you, Lauren. As pointed out in the board report, a lot of good growth this year, K1 and 2, a lot of good trajectory, a lot of good learning going on there. I'm really impressed with the number of kids that are, and teachers that are participating in summer tutoring as well, and so that will hopefully continue upward trend over the summer.
Great into the school year. Our field day on that Monday of the last week. Of course, we had rain. I felt bad for Michelle Weaver. It was her last, she was retiring, and it was her last field day, but we made the best of it, and we still had a great day. And then we wrapped up with our all-school bike ride, and that's always a fun event as they bike through. And yeah, just a great end of the year.
So I'd like to recognize Dan Doolittle. He retired with 40 years of service. That's pretty darn impressive. We also recognized at our end of the year breakfast for the district, Daley Mitchell was selected as Young Educator of the Year. And so that was pretty awesome for her to be able to get that. And then we also were lucky enough to get Support Staff of the Year as well, which is Dwight McNeil, who is one of our custodians and does a fantastic job. Also, just kind of an FYI, we do have Leaps Camp going on in our building right now too. Sherry Guilfoyle is doing that. It's a program sponsored through Kansas State University. And so it's a lot of STEM type stuff. And so we've got a bunch of kids that are participating in that, so it's kind of cool to see them come in and want to be involved.
So, couple things. First off, back in the corner, you can't see him because it's hidden, is Jim Prothy, so he's running our technology tonight. So official, Jim has started his new position. He's in the training part for the Director of Technology, so he's learning this part tonight so as Tom transitions out. So welcome to Jim. And then this is the last board meeting for Tom Falsgraf, and I don't want to mess this up, but Tom, this is year number what with us?
26.
26. So that a lot of knowledge and stuff, so forth, and he's done a nice job for us technology wise, and so he'll be missed. Although congratulations on retirement, and we know his number, so we can still call him. We do know where he lives, so we can do that. And then also, this is the last meeting for Dr. Thompson as she's retiring, and I do know that this is year 7 for her here. I won't ask her to say how many total years in education, but a few more than that. But do appreciate everything that she's done. I do think she's going to be here locally for a little while, but I think she might be moving to some other place that you would not be driving to. So anyway, congratulations to Jim and to Tom and Tammy for their retirement, and they will be missed. So
Great, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our information and discussion items, and we'll start with the building needs assessment presentation. Tammy, thank you.
So every year we have to give an update on annual update for the state assessments, and that has to do with some of the information that we gather from the buildings. In your board packet, there were building needs assessments. That's a template that is provided by KSDE. They're not required. It's just suggested that they put that together so that we can look at what barriers we have. But I'll pull out a little bit of information from each of those. Just the head counts, as you can see, how many we have for each school, and then how many students are on IEPs. If you look at the percentages of the Cottonwood percentage, 46% of that is not students with like a OT or speech, so that means that there's another educational disability that they have. Of the Sunflower percentage, 50% of those students have needs that are not like OT speech. And of the middle school, 59% of those do not have speech or OT, and then of the high school, 57% of those students. So there's quite an impact there with students who have either OHI, other health, which could be ADD, ADHD usually, learning disability, developmentally delayed, emotionally delayed, emotional disability, intellectual disability, or autism. So that's that impacts some of the ways in which we have barriers also. The ELL students, those percentages across, I will tell you that we have had a large increase of students who are English is not their first language this year. That's the most that I've seen for quite a while. So, at risk, which the definition for at risk are only those students who qualify for free lunch. So we do know that students who also qualify for free lunch may not be educationally at risk, but people who don't qualify may also be. But KSDE has us collect data for any student that would be at risk, be it homeless, they have not making credits, if they're behind on grades, retained, if they are a foster child, there's like 10 or 12 different ways to do that, and that number is much larger. So we've had like, I think it was like 600 last year, so we'll still get some of this information. Some of the information that you see tonight may be different after all of the data is input. We have to give this presentation before July, but our data that we send up to the state is done June 30th. So when it comes in July 1, and then it gets populated into the building report card that you'll see about in January. So some of that information, I'll tell you why we're looking at some of the stuff that we have. Okay, next slide, please. Attendance rates across the board have been in the 90s or above, so that's pretty steady. The chronic absenteeism rate, I will tell you that we were looking at this, and today's populated information, Sunflower was not at 19%, they were at 9%, and Cottonwood was actually at 9%, so that's when they uploaded it, so at the end of June, that'll be populated correctly, but right now, that's what we figured with the information that we had, so 9% looks a lot better than 19, so just so you know. Overall, the district rate is down about 11%, according to our data that we have now. So chronic absenteeism, we still had 202 kids who are chronically absent over the school year through all the buildings. So that's 10% or more of the days of school that they've missed. So if you do that across your 13 years, you can miss an entire school year or more. Okay. So the next one. Okay, we do not have state assessment data because they're new and they have not set cut scores. They will not do cut scores until the summer. So what I'm giving you is a look at last year's information. If you remember that it was presented last year at this time, but we look at the percent of kids in levels 1 and 2, or the students who are not in 3 and 4. But as you see, that's the information from last year on English language arts. So we had 50% or more of our students in most of the grade levels who were still in 1 and 2. The idea is to move them from 1 to 2, 2 to 3s. Usually you don't move from 1 to 3, so there's some things that you need to keep in mind on that. But I'll talk a little bit more about what we'll do with that. So next slide. This is the math from last year. So again, 50% or more of our students are still in levels 1 and 2. So looking at how we move those up each year. So the tests this year were very different, so I don't know if they'll be comparable. When we've had new tests, they usually stop that comparison and then carry it on. So it'll be up to whatever the cut scores are to see what the levels are. So you'll get that hopefully in October, but it may be later. Okay, so when we looked at the stuff that we do for state assessments, we look at interim assessments, which are formative. So you give assessments to give you information about how students are doing so that you can change your teaching or what you're hitting. So the interim assessments are formative, and there are many tests that you can give also. Now, they've gotten better over the time. The high school has not always had access to the interim assessments, or they've had less access to it because they had changed the test, and then they didn't keep up with having the interims for them 3 times a year. So what we do is just to look at those interim assessments. The interim assessments are the assessments that match directly to the state assessments because they're based upon the standards. So you teach what you test what you teach. That's what the interims do for you. So barriers, what barriers do we have to keep kids from moving from 1 and 2s to 3s and 4s? Chronic absenteeism. Of course, if you're missing school, you're chronically absent. 202 kids did not, have the instructional time that they needed. Recruitment and retention of highly qualified staff. It's becoming more and more difficult to hire people who are certified teachers. Not as many students are going through college to go into education. As you see on the new hires also, that there's a lot of people called hourly instructors. Those are people that do not have a college degree that are certified to teach in that level. We have currently at English at the high school, we have one teacher that's not a certified teacher. Standards alignment, which is our KISA goal, making sure that what we have to align to teach is actually aligned to the standards. What we're told to teach, what we're tested on, so the standards alignment. There'll be more about that. That'll come along with KISA next year. Professional development, which is also a KISA goal. In order to do standards alignment or to do some of the other specific things, you've got to be trained in it. So having that training and having the professional development along with that. Dedicated time for data review at professional learning communities is always important. Teachers would like to have more time to collaborate, to tear through the data and to look at that and to have it dedicated just to that. We've started doing some of that at Cottonwood, where they've worked with one of the consultants that we have. High quality intervention materials and training. Intervention, specifically at the secondary level, is very hard to find something that you can do to increase scores or increase their ability in reading and math, because a lot of times if they're missing a phonetic piece or something, then it's very elementary and it's not at their level. So finding something that you can do with the secondary for sure is higher. Social emotional needs. We see this a lot. Self-regulation, self-efficacy, conflict resolution, establishing positive relationships, making responsible decisions, and relevance are big areas that we have highlighted through all the buildings. Now, where do we get this information? Well, we compile it from a lot of talking through staff, through professional development, through surveys, through just what we see when we look at data. So a lot of that's where these barriers come in. So what are some of the actions and resources that we have to address that? Letters training. We have a lot of people who have gone through letters training, and we're waiting to see if KSDE will still be able to offer that for free. I probably won't know until July, so that funding had been pulled. The teachers who are currently in Volume 1 will be able to finish Volume 2, so that's good to know. There's going to be a new professional learning committee. We're going to call it the KISA committee. So that team is going to be pulled together. They'll start in August, and they're going to look at the KISA goals and what we need to do to develop a calendar of professional development for standards alignment. Doing standards alignment, having training professional development in that will help also. Continuing our partnership with Elizabeth Layton Center is important, because that reaches those students with those SEL goals and helps with reducing some chronic absenteeism, because they can actually be seen in school. So chronic absenteeism also is any absence, whether it's excused or unexcused. Training and use of interim assessments. Not all grade levels have used the interim assessments. It's something that they have worked on and have really done well with producing those. So the use of that will be able to kind of target specific standards that may be missing, or we know that they're either doing really well with or they need remediation in. Consistent use of assessments K through 12, just making sure that we are using what we have available, that it is there, and that we have good training on that. Partnership with the Reading League, we're continuing that. They come in and help give feedback on the science of reading. The partnership we have with Cultivate Education, that is our consultant who has worked with the high school, they've worked in middle school, they're working with Cottonwood right now. That person has a lot of connections across the board, so can bring in a lot of personal training that we can bring here and not have to send out. Curriculum review and high quality instructional materials. High quality instructional materials is also a part of KISA. So making sure that when you get your materials, that they are of the quality that you need, because it should hit all of those standards. Okay, so what this brings us to then is what, you want review, the board review? Yes. The board review of the building needs. So you're probably gonna have to blow that up a little bit too. It's a lot of boxes with a little bit of space. So maybe I'll just move closer. So basically, a lot of this information, so this is what is required in the statute, that you look at this and then we give you what barriers we have, what we just talked about, what some budget considerations would be, and then how much time it's going to take to achieve it, and then any comments that we have to kind of explain that. So at Cottonwood, we know that social emotional wellness, school readiness, chronic absenteeism, continued staff development on science of reading, time for collaboration, data analysis, additional staff. They'd like to have like another instructional coach. We used to have like 2 of those positions, and they would love to see that position that like Corey had, that Ivy has, like that be in each building. And then recruitment of high qualified staff. So what needs to happen? Some of this has continued for a few years because we have not had a lot of changes in some of that now. So increased wages to stay competitive, recruit and train highly qualified staff, maintain the curriculum to meet changing needs, professional development in the science of reading and letters training. Those are all things that for budgetary consideration to keep in mind for that. So K2 doesn't take assessments, so they're not impacted by that. But what do we need? We just need to continue, again, with the letters training, partnership with ELC, the high quality materials, standards alignment, data review, and collaboration. So those are what we think would help meet some of those barriers. Sunflower, a lot of the same stuff, and honestly, these are about the same all the way down, except for you have some of them with the letters training, because it is required in July of 28 for those grade levels, so K5. This is their time to achieve. It's just we need to make educational progress every year, and previous boards have also approved that when public education is fully funded across to both the state and federal statutes, guidelines for all students for their pre-K-12 career. And we just need to make yearly progress in that. So again, the same training. We need to look at the use of interim assessments at Sunflower in reading and math, and then training in fast bridge math and collaboration and data review. The middle school has a lot of the same. Chronic absenteeism, social emotional, their requirement of recruitment of highly qualified staff, the professional development and balanced assessments, curriculum alignment, professional learning communities, teaching strategies for Generation Alpha additional staff. The social worker or student services counselor would be very helpful. And to review the building schedule, making sure that if there's time to add additional things for like MTSS, because we do still need some additional intervention programs for MTSS, because that again is the hardest place to find those materials. Again, just when we're fully funded and that we make yearly progress, again, some dedicated times for PLC and use of the interims and minis tests. High school, same thing, but looking at curriculum mapping, time for staff development. They've started doing some of that, but we need to increase that. So, letters training, we have a lot of I think all of the English teachers are signed up for that. Hopefully that gets to be funded. Collaboration, consistent use of local assessments. fast bridge training in math, standards alignment. They would like a social worker also, dedicated PLC times. So those are all things that have carried across and we've added to. So if you have additional comments you would like to make to that, you need to let me know tonight so that I can put those in, and that can be posted. We post the building needs assessment in this on the website. The building needs assessments are not required, but we do that. So.
As far as the time to achieve, as I read through them and went back into the years previous and how they're, like you said, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Like, is there any way, and maybe it exists, but is there any kind of quantitative measure of yearly progress? Because to me, I read yearly progress, and as a previous sped teacher, that means absolutely nothing. Progress can be 0.2, or progress can be 20, percent. And so I'm wondering if
what this is saying is, how are we going to get every student from 1 to a 3 or 4, every student from 2 to 4? How long is that going to take? How long is that going to take?
Gotcha.
So that's honestly, that's exactly what it is. And it's like, I can't tell you. It might take you a week to learn something, and it might take Matt, a month to learn it, and then Kelly might come in already knowing.
Sure.
So, yeah. That's why it's very hard to fill this out sometimes, because it really is like, when will this happen? When will everybody be making 3s and 4s?
Yeah. I guess, like, especially for the things that we have data points for, like the chronic absences, can we put?
It's really not asking when will chronic absenteeism be fixed. It's asking, when are you going to be from 3s and 4s, when you're getting out of 1s and 2s. I mean, you could take each barrier, I guess, and look at it, but that's not what the form is asking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
This particular form.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we are decreasing some of that, but and the way that we report that, you can see that in the building needs assessment that we do, you'll see that, and then also on the billing report cards, you can see where that decreases. But to say, when will every student be out of 3?
Great.
I can't.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you.
Is there a way to track as the classes go through? So we have a certain percentage are in the 1 and 2 this year?
We do that
And then-
each year, but you cannot measure,
So
it's not the same, so you can't compare a 3rd grade test and a 4th grade test. You can only compare 3rd grades to 3rd grades, 4th grades to 4th grades, because it's not a linear test.
Okay.
Which doesn't make sense.
No.
But
How do you track your progress if the tool you're using to track your progress doesn't track your
has
progress?
a limit of that.
Exactly. And high school only takes it at 10th grade, the ELA and math only at 10th grade. So there's
Okay.
no other measure for that after 10th
I
grade.
know I've asked that before. I said,
Yeah.
So you're measuring, you're measuring grade against grade, meaning 3rd grade this year, how are we doing next year compared, knowing that it's a different group of kids,
Yeah.
and so, each
So that
year
could
has their own
that
identity,
could
some are
skew
more
your data.
academic than not, or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is
Thanks.
that is a limitation
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it.
the pieces of data that we have that we can go across the board and look at, you could look at your fast bridge data, you can look at pieces like that, but that's not what this is asking about. It's not what's reported or what they collect data on. We have to give fast bridge data on, we have to take it K9, K12, but only a few grade levels even report the dyslexia. It only a subtest to the state. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Do you have any questions? No more comments? Okay, then we will have Michelle sign that tonight, and then it's signed. It has to be in the minutes that you looked at that. Now the update for the the state assessments we took this year, Amy will give to you once that comes out, but,
And then this is
Yeah.
actually an action item
yep,
to approve
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have leave time discussion, and Matt has some information for us.
Yeah, so really, as part of board docs and so forth, during the teacher negotiations, you all are aware that we're changing from sick and personal leave to paid time off. And so, really, this is to determine how the board wishes to proceed regarding the other classification of employees. So, in the document, I listed out three different scenarios I guess I see, and tried to hit some pros and cons with everything. This is by no means exhaustive or inclusive. So, the first option is that the teachers have the paid time off. That's what's been approved. The remainder of the staff stays as is, 4 personal days. I said 8 to 10 sick days. Number of sick days determined on what their contract or how many days they work and so forth. Option 2, would that all employees would then be given paid time off leave. That could be a potential from up to 12 to 14 days of those added together. A few of the pros, that's treating all employees the same, which allows more potential use for personal days. The cons of that, there is a monetary or budget implication that could come along with that. Also, the way the blackout days are listed and so forth is you would have maybe some blackout days for some groups of employees where that blackout day doesn't maybe affect their role or their position that they're assigned. And then option 3 is and the way how I did this was I said option 3 was contract or salary employees receive paid time off, work agreement where hourly employees remain as is. Why that delineation or what have you? It simply is because if you're a salary or you're a contract employee, you're signing a year-long contract for a finite amount of time. No other reason that and our hourly people work with work agreements at will employee type piece. So the pros of that. Really, the main thing is it's probably less of a monetary component to it, but the con is the different system of employees are being treated differently. So, I mean, this truly is a board discussion and decision. I think you can debate or discuss all different angles from all different pieces. I don't know that there's one better than the other because they all have pros and cons. But I tried to explain, just a few things for some thought process.
Okay. Does anybody have any discussion on that?
And this would be for an action item later in the meeting, but if there was questions or discussion or what have you, then happy to answer. You can, or you can wait either way.
Which option is the easiest for the HR part of it, I guess?
Probably everyone being the same. That will allow us to have all our internal systems just have one methodology behind it. Is we'll have to add some leave buckets, if you will, into our time attendance system if we have employees on different types of systems. They all go the same, then we have the same number of leave buckets for all of them. Now, that is not terribly difficult because we've already have that in place for custodial maintenance, because they can get snow leave, if you will, when they work a snow day, we add in. So they're the only classification employees that have access to that leave. So it's not terribly difficult, but it is one more thing to track if we add in more leave categories.
And do you know a preference by the employees? Do you have anything like that?
No. The one thing, then somebody may be thinking, well, why is one, like hourly, why is it a greater risk or whatever? We don't, the way and you see the personnel reports, right? I mean, we have a lot of turnover with this, paras specifically, but there are our largest group of individual. But with that, so we have a high turnover, but we also we don't work on at least the way we're currently set up, we don't work on an accruals basis. So most, if you go to work somewhere, you get an accrual, so you earn so much for the work. And we're not set up that way. Doesn't mean we can't move to that in the future, but currently we're not set up that way. And so someone, if they've been with us, say, a year, they get that at the beginning of the year. And so they could, in theory, use their time and then choose to resign. They can do that now. It's because there's personal and sick. I mean, there's a few more delineations, if that makes sense.
Any other discussion on that, or are we ready to move on? So next up, we've got some KASB policy updates that Matt has information for us.
I've put it in board docs so you can see it. It also explains kind of the rationale of why these are being up for potential adoption next month. Most of them are the result of statute changes. And so it's trying to get those in line. So we'll discuss this next meeting in more depth, but I want to make sure that you all have that prior to next meeting.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
And then the last one, the building tours, meetings or whatever. I guess for getting ready for July. So this year we had the special meetings, if you will, that we had in the morning, like every other month or whatever, where we actually had them in the morning, where you could have the building presentation, you could visit the classrooms and the building and so forth. And so question would be does the board want to continue that? If we don't, then the building presentations that we would have that in during a regular meeting. We've done it both ways. Usually our building presentations are usually second semester. That way we have some data and some stuff to talk about, kind of what the initiatives are. And the reason here, because just for next month, because it's nice to be able to put that on the agenda and say, hey, this is what we have, and that way we can give notice as part of the regular meeting agenda. So, not sure what the board would, what direction they would like to do.
I personally would like to keep doing them. After reading some of the comments in the surveys, I would even be up to going more frequently. I don't know how that works with the calendar, but I remember being in the building and wanting the board in there to know what I was doing, and that was those were the comments that I was reading was,
Yep.
Board members don't know what I do in this classroom. I think the building presentations were great, and if we could keep them at the second, that's fine. I'd like to be able to actually, I know it's a disruption, but I'd like to be able to go into the classroom.
Yeah, sure.
Not just walking the halls and getting a lay of the land kind of thing, but actually seeing,
Right.
what teachers are teaching
Right.
to our students,
Mhm.
so that, we can have the conversations about things.
I agree with that, and I know that could become complicated with COMA. So even if it's just one of us going, if we have that building administrators send out a list of days and times that we're able to go in and just visit, I think that would be also.
Yeah, we can,
I'd like to see.
that's why we're having the discussion,
Yeah.
so.
I like going into the buildings too.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm hearing is, first question is, when we had like the meeting part, was that time okay? Because I know we didn't have one meeting where everybody was able to come, and understandable, but is the time that we've had, do we need to adjust the time of the meetings? Because now would be that's pretty easy to do right now, so for the meeting part.
I feel like if you're gonna do the reports from the admin, I think 7 o'clock works well because it gives them a chance to do it. I feel like if we did it at 7 o'clock and didn't have that kind of presentation, you wouldn't probably get much time in the classroom with the kids and the teachers, and that kind of defeats the purpose of it all. So, I mean,
I'm pretty
just
flexible
content.
as far as my schedule goes, so.
Same.
Okay. We could look at that maybe like I'll say the formal type, more formal type meeting with that could be like second semester.
Sure.
We could look at something like first semester, like pick a different day or we can come up with something on that.
Sure.
To be able to and not that we can't put some of this, I mean, when I say put it off, we can notify and make all of that and cover the rules. It's just easier to plan as we're trying to put our master schedule together now. So, okay.
Yep, I like that. Thank you.
Next up, we have open forum. So I'll just do a quick review of some of the highlights here. The form needs to be returned 10 minutes prior to the meeting, and we've got 2 this evening. Each person who speaks gets 5 minutes, just as a reminder, and patrons are advised that the board members will not entertain questions or a discussion will not happen. We won't take any action. According to Kansas law, KSA 75-4319, the board shall not hear personal complaints concerning any employee or group of employees of the school district or any person connected with the school district during open session. Matters relating to the security of the board, the school buildings, or facilities, or the information system of the school. All other topics defined as part of KSA 75-4319. And let's see here. Our first one this evening is Elsie Blackmore, so you can come on up.
Do you want me to wait until she gets back?
You can go, yeah.
Since I believe in transparency, I feel I must uphold that value. I myself specifically was not planning on speaking again after I did back in April, which seems like forever ago, but has actually only been 2 months. I was not going to speak because I felt I had said all I needed to say. However, I just got back from this thing called Sunflower Girl State, and my time there taught me a lot. For those of you who are unaware, this event is put on by the American Legion Auxiliary to teach young girls about government. They have a counterpart for the boys as well, and the delegates are selected from across the state to work together to form a mock government to reflect that of city, county, and state government in Kansas. Now, I'm sharing this with you to say that the most important thing I learned is that I and my fellow classmates are not alone in this struggle. The sign that we are talking about has profound importance for many reasons and statistics that we have given you, but it goes beyond that. By my rough estimates, there are about 50 classrooms in the high school. This sign was only displayed in 9 of those classrooms. It was not plastered around the school or painted in a huge display on the walls of the commons. This tiny 8x10 piece of paper hung in the back of 9 classrooms on bulletin boards that went unnoticed by students every day. Now, I agree with Mr. Miller and Ms. Gerken that yes, maybe further disciplinary action could be taken or implementation of stricter rules when dealing with bullying. I also agree with Mr. Meek and Mr. Hines that every issue should be examined case by case when determining punishment. But the key thing that was missing in that discussion, and the point that has been brought up time and time again by me and my friends, is that the only action that effectively can be taken to prevent bullying from kids feeling unsafe is knowing that they have someone to go to. Thus, the whole point of the safe zone signs. Obviously, there are issues. We have been very transparent about that, and I was happy to see the board finally even hint that they cared about this.
even if you kept dancing around what everybody could tell you were trying to say. However, you missed the solution because you do not realize the genuine struggles we go through every single day. Thus, the need for the signs to come back up so these problems that are very real can be effectively addressed. I know many of you want this to go away, that you want to focus on something else, as was shared from the comfort of being behind a screen while teenagers have been putting their sanity on the line because we have the courage to stand up in public and say what we believe. By continuing to not address this, by ignoring us, by making faces at us, or staring at your laptops and phones while we are speaking, you are just giving us and this movement more power. The reason why I brought up Girls State was to say that I met incredibly impressive young women from across the state of Kansas. I have gained hope in knowing that one day we will be the future leaders and that there is truly nothing stopping us, truly nothing in our way. And just like the ambition and the drive from those girls that want to see change and betterment in their communities, we are also not going to stop until we see the change that we have been pleading for the last 6 months. If I could give you some advice coming from a student, is that if you want us to go away, if you want to focus on issues that you feel hold more importance than student welfare or fair representation of all the members of the community that you were elected to represent, I will gladly step aside after you put the signs back up. Now I ask you, will we see the signs back on these 9 unnoticed bulletin boards come August? Will you keep endangering the children of your community because you are not brave enough to keep your promises? Or will we have to continue to fight for 6 more months because you do not have the courage to do what is right? Thank you.
And next we have Grace Walena.
My name is Grace Walenia. I'm a PHS graduate, an educator, and an older sister to 2 current students in the district. Last month, I shared my personal experience within the Paola schools and spoke about the meaningful impact the Safe Zone signs had on me as a student. In response, the board stated, all areas of the school should be safe. You're absolutely right. They should be, but the reality is they're not. The board has not made any efforts since the last meeting to address this. While no policy can guarantee every child's safety, that does not mean you shouldn't try, hence why I've returned to readdress this issue. Creating a truly safe and inclusive environment demands action, empathy, and a willingness to listen to the students who are courageously voicing their needs. That's why I'm asking this board to not only talk about student safety, but to back it up with action. Recommit to visible signs of support, listen to your students, and create schools where everyone feels safe enough to thrive. After I spoke at last month's meeting, I was overwhelmed by the number of students, former students, and parents who reached out to share their experiences. With their permission, I'm going to share just a few, due to my time limit. One parent said, my child left PHS one day intending to end their life after an interaction with an administrator. I tried to get answers from the superintendent and the board. Nothing was done. A former student shared, I was sexually harassed and touched inappropriately in class and on school grounds. When I reported this, I was removed from the class, but the boys who violated me faced no disciplinary action. Another said, I was bullied for years, and admin dismissed my concerns saying, my daughter is friends with them, they wouldn't do that. The bullying forced me to drop the class I love the most. Another recalled, one teacher had a sign that said, debate is like a woman's skirt, short enough to create interest, long enough to hide the subject. I'll never forget how unsafe I felt in that class. Somehow that sign was acceptable, but the Safe Zone signs are? I would love to hear your justification for that one. Another student shared, a teacher asked me for a hug and grabbed me before I could say no. He often showed up where I worked and asked for me by name. This happened frequently and made me so uncomfortable that I hid at work when I saw his car. Another said, while attending PHS, I was called slurs, threatened with revenge porn, and my peers took pictures of my skirt while on the stairs. When I went to the principal, he said nothing could be done, even though this occurred on school grounds. These stories are hard to hear, but they're real, and they're happening here. They reveal a pattern, students being dismissed, silenced, and left unsupported. That is exactly why visible signs like the Safe Zone posters matter. This board has said all areas of the school should be safe, and we want every student to feel supported. But you have done nothing to back up those statements. In fact, you've done the opposite. How dare you? You are lying to yourselves, and you are lying to your students. Those signs told students which classrooms were inclusive, respectful, and safe, because based on the stories I just shared, not all of them are. By removing the signs and continuing to ignore the voices of students, you are sending the clear message that you do not care, that they do not matter, and that you are actively choosing not to prioritize their safety. You all should be ashamed. In a world so full of hate, violence, and uncertainty, the least you can do is listen to your students who are telling you exactly what they need to succeed and to feel safe. Once again, I urge this board to reconsider the decision, and more importantly, to open honest dialogue with students, educators, and families about what real safety and support looks like. Because when students feel safe, they don't just learn, they thrive. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to action items. So the first one up is to approve leave time. So we had a little information about that earlier. Do we have a motion to approve the leave time? Or is there any discussion?
Motion to approve leave time?
I think we have to pick an option.
No.
Pick one, right?
I think you said the easiest would be, I think 2 is what would, he said would fall into his, that category.
I kind of like option 3.
My first reading through was option 3, but
I was thinking 1 or 3, either one.
how many hourly employees do we have? Sorry.
That's off the top of my head, I will go give the right percentage or number, but it will be the majority of the employees or hourly. Because paraprofessionals are the majority of our employees by themselves.
Got You don't have to look at it.
Okay.
That answers the question.
So I have a July
Yeah,
one.
no, you're good, you're good.
And what did you say was the easiest for you?
2. That they would all be on.
That would require the least amount of change in our internal systems. Easy is probably, I don't know if I want to use the word easy, because there are going to be follow-up consequences we'll deal with. But as far as just manipulating our systems, that one would be easy.
But 1 is what we have right now.
One is where we're at right now, yes.
Which is doable. Yes? I mean, that's what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, when we do 1, we will have to add, if we do option 1, we will have to add a new leave bucket to track leave. Because when the paid time off leave that's only available to certified staff, we will still have sick leave bucket that's available to all staff. And then we'll have a personal leave bucket that is available to all staff except for teachers.
But we wouldn't have that tracking issue with option 3, okay?
Option 3, yes, because we'd still have, the hourly employees will be as is. Option 2 would be the only one where we have, basically we'll need 2 leave buckets. paid time off being one, sick leave being the second, because unused paid time off doesn't roll as paid time off. It would roll to next year as sick. And that would, basically, we would just rename personal from right now to paid time off is what we would do.
To me, 3 makes the most sense.
Kind of does me too, because I'm concerned about how we address the blackout days that are
Right.
teachers' days. That's not something that your job requires.
I make a motion to approve option 3.
Second.
Okay, thanks guys. We've got a motion and a second to approve option 3. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's 7 of us.
And then it's roughly 2/3 of the employees are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next action is to approve the Paola High School and Middle School Employee Handbook. And Matt.
Yeah, so there's 3 things here. So based off your previous motion for leave time, then we will need to go in and update the leave time for the employee handbook. What we would do is we would just take the language basically from the teacher's contract for that. We'd state that who would qualify under that, and then we'd leave the other as it is. So we would just mesh that together, easily done. And so what I would recommend in that regard, we can do 2 things. You can approve the employee handbook with those changes, and we can do that, and then I can, we can send that out, or we can put it together and have it as part of the consent agenda just for that part of it next month. Either way works. For the high school and middle school handbooks, we did the best we could with taking the conversation from last month and trying to put together what was asked or discussed. And I'll be honest with you, that was a struggle for us, but we've got some of that. I have had some individual conversations today with a couple board members regarding that. In regard, I would say, if there is a desire to change something in the high school or middle school handbook, we really need to know what that would be and have it defined today, because administrators are going to be off July. We need to have this stuff for August. So happy to answer questions. I know that Mark and Jeff are here. They could answer questions as well if you have them. I guess one thing I would state, because there's a question on like consequences as it relates to bullying and so forth, and really the bullying content, what the administrators tried to do was put the wording in for bullying. If there was something, but it's not all inclusive, meaning if there's an issue with bullying and there's a physical component to it, then that would be dealt with the same as when there's something that has, like physical fighting and that kind of stuff. So excuse me. So
I would still like to see some kind of restructure out, as far as, I don't know, suspensions maybe, just to help kind of define the consequences. across the board.
Do you mean district-wide, or are you talking about a specific?
I think it would have to be district-wide, wouldn't it?
We've already approved the handbooks for the elementary. I mean, it's,
Well, you couldn't just do it for one school, right?
I would say you would need to have I would agree with that, but no, not one school, but if you had elementary that's different than secondary, I think that could be appropriate.
So you could do it for like middle and high.
Yes.
And are you saying 3 strikes you're out on what, on any disciplinary action, or?
No. I mean, because that's hard to really put in a box and to define. So it would be for sure on like suspensions, getting out of school suspensions. I think is a good starting point.
So if you get 3 suspensions, it's like, what are you really saying, I guess? I need some clarification.
If you get 3 suspensions, you get expelled.
Per year or per time?
I mean, my initial thought was per year. I don't know, I don't know the average of repeat offenders, or I don't know. What are your thoughts? That's why I'm bringing it.
I will say, if there was language like that, by law, whenever there's a recommendation to go beyond 2 weeks or what is considered long-term or expulsion, by law, that has to go to a hearing, to hearing officers that rule on that. And so they have to rule on.
As far as the policy or case by case?
If there is a recommendation, so if the policy could say that if you've been suspended twice, on the 3rd time, that it could state that you must be recommended for long-term or suspension or expulsion. But it can't just say it's automatic. You've got to have, because it has to go to a hearing officer for due process. And then if there's an appeal, then an appeal would come to the board and so forth.
Okay.
My only fear with it is that it might deter giving suspension.
I thought about that
Because,
too.
yeah. That's, do both the middle school and high school have the highlighted part that would be a violation of board policy, or is that just in the high schools? It's both.
I think it's exactly
The highlighted part is that your motion?
Yeah.
They're the same.
Yeah. Because I think that we could create a board policy that kind of captures that idea that has worked in other districts.
So what would that look like?
I don't know, other districts, I think we have to look and see what, because once you get to the expulsion part, it does become a little bit more. There's only 180 days they can be expelled, I believe, is that right?
186.
186, so they can come right back.
So you're suggesting we pass the handbooks and then put something in the board policy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, and, I mean, as long as, I don't know, I just think there needs to be some more accountability. What would it take to add that to a board policy?
I would need to know what, more specifics on what to include. And then I would reach out to the School Boards Association to see, do they have they worked on any similar policies for someone else? Because the majority of the school policies, they get their expertise on. And if not, then we would need to, I would need to try to send that information to them, see if they can take a, trying to write such one. And then A, that would capture what you're wanting, and B, that would pass their legal expertise to make sure that we're doing things according to law. So, I mean, that is doable. I would just need to know what the collective whole is in regard to that.
First step would be to reach out to them and see if there's anything that is the board policy that they've worked to that's stricter than average, I guess. And that'd be the first step.
And that's easily done. That's no problem. But what I can is I can't let that hold this back, because we really do need to.
But we could approve this and put that in the board policy, I think is what she was saying.
Yeah, you can pass, or you can approve the handbooks.
Right.
And then I can reach out to them
Try to come
and
up
start
with
that
something.
process of trying to figure out what would that look like. And say, hey, do you have something similar? And then, and that can be an ongoing process.
I think, yeah, if we work on something going forward, we can, I don't see any issues with approving, since it allows that by adding the board policy aspect.
I don't know, Jeff and Mark, would it benefit you, would you prefer it one way or the other to be wrote more in the handbook, or would you prefer it to be something that the board policy that you have to back up what's in the handbook? I mean, do you guys have any preference or thoughts on either way would be better from that standpoint or not? Or
Both would accomplish the same goal. When I call a parent, if they have a question about why is my kid being suspended for allegedly bullying another student, if I cite our handbook, that I always tell them the board approved handbook. So whether it's a board approved policy or a board approved handbook, that is what we use to convey our message, as well as our discipline to students.
yeah.
Mark, do you have the violation of board policy or student handbook policy listed in, like, in the high school has it on that front page as reasons for suspension, expulsion, and then there's a list. They've added and highlighted number 17 to it. I just didn't know if it's, I don't see it on the one that you had submitted with the green highlight changes.
The green stuff is just on the bullying and harassment.
Right.
In fairness, that line there was on the original changes that I gave you earlier.
Yes, yeah.
So we hadn't talked about that.
Yeah, I think just as long as it's added to the middle school's list as well, I think is what Samantha was making sure, because it was on yours.
So I mean,
Just so that-
that's something that can easily be added.
Yeah, just so that it's reflected in both, I think would be
Sure.
important.
The reason that's there is if we go to a long-term suspension or expulsion hearing, part of the documents that you're required to go over are board policy.
Sure.
And so when we cite a rationale for long-term suspension is violation of board policy, I felt it was important to include it in the handbook so it was in front of the students.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, that's something easily can be added to our behavior piece.
That'd be awesome, thank you. And I think with that, I motion to approve the handbooks. And make the employee handbook.
With the addition of
With the
17.
addition of 17.
And the rewriting of
Yeah.
the of the, or we'll update for the
Yep,
the
the
leave.
update to the leave, yep.
Okay.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second to approve these with those modifications mentioned. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. We've got 7. Okay, so next we need to talk about approving the building needs assessment. And that is what Tammy talked to us about earlier. Do we have a motion to approve the building needs assessment?
I have one question. This just is for the state board, right? It's not necessarily like, if we wanted to add something that wouldn't necessarily go to the state board, but be for the district, would that be put into this? Like,
Do you mean in the comments?
yeah, in the comments.
It goes on our website and that's
Yeah, it's just part of the
just part of it.
Okay.
It's just-
Yeah, we don't submit
No, it's
submit
not.
this anywhere.
It's
Okay.
just
This
by
is-
statute, you have to.
Oh, that was the part.
Yeah.
Just because I think that it would be important to add some kind of tracking of the
Yeah.
data aspect. I know Sunflower does it extremely well with the iReady and Bass Bridge, and I'd like to see that done in the middle school going forward in high school.
Yeah,
I don't know
that
if this
was
is the place
some,
to add it or not.
some of the comments that were like, that was the Bass Bridge and the training and the interim assessments, so I think that will cover what you're doing. But yeah, the state does not look at. So, and balanced assessments and some of the wordings in that
Mhm.
comments.
Yeah. I see that.
Yeah. Training for Bass Bridge and math specifically is on there.
A motion to approve the building needs assessment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the building needs assessment. All of those in favor, raise your hands. Okay. 7. Okay, so next up, Jimmy is gonna talk to us about the general insurance renewal, and see if we want to approve that.
Yeah, thank you.
Property and casualty.
Yeah. Actually, when I cover this, I'll cover the next 2 topics.
Okay.
Because they kind of go hand in hand, even though we're going to approve them as separate, they're separate policies, but we'll talk about it all at one time for
Okay.
the sake of time. So the property and casualty insurance renewal and the work comp insurance renewal. Both of those policies match our fiscal year, so they're July 1. So unfortunately, it's not like you can get those early, so we always have to approve them at the June meeting for the July 1 effective date. So I covered a lot of that, have a lot of the history in my board report that I present to you every year at this meeting, including the current quote. If you remember from last year, we had a couple options to look at. There was an insurance pool that was pretty active last year, and that ended up not being a competitive quote at all. So global statement I would say to start is we're limited in the choices that we have because of the insurance coverage that we need and the dollar value of the buildings and things. There's not a lot of carriers who are really looking to insure schools for some reason. And then, so that's the property side of things. When we get to the work comp side, there are some other markets out there. We'll talk a little bit about our mod rating, which is our experience factor of claims and injuries, and it is not good. So there were several carriers there that just declined the quote. They don't want to cover our work comp insurance. So those things all play into the renewal factor. So property and casualty, those, the buildings, the general liability of the district, our auto policy, equipment policy, crime, policy called linebacker, which again is a liability policy, the cyber protection, and then the umbrella, the total overall liability of things. So that's all covered under the property and casualty package. And you can see in there the quote this year is an increase of $61,868. So that would make the premium $414,335, a significant amount of money. We also have a significant value of buildings that we're insured. The liability piece is huge of that too. I will say out of that $414,000, $357,000 and change of that is just property coverage. So that's the buildings. That's tornadoes and fire and things like that, not the liability and other things. So that's 86% of the cost is there. So that's the bulk of it. But obviously it's important. It's kind of like your homeowner's insurance. Your house probably didn't burn down last year, so you paid insurance for nothing. That's like us. We have not had a building claim, you know, in many years that we certainly hope continues, but you kind of have to have it. It's, again, a significant amount of money, but compared to the 154 million and change value of our buildings, you get to keep that in perspective. So I always have that in my board report as well, and summary of it all. So the value, and the insurance company looks at that every year. So they said our value, property value is up about $5.9 million this year, or about a 4% increase. So that gets it up to that $154 million number. But they say the total district property value is actually $171 million, and we're insured at $154 million, which is 90% of that. So in the event of a complete wipeout of every building in the district, we're underinsured by $17 million. Is that likely? It's just good for you to know what the worst case looks like. The other thing you'll see, and this is all out there on the board doc site for public as well, all the conditional renewals and the limits and things. Generally speaking, it seems like the trend of insurance is to charge more and reduce your coverage and reduce their exposure. So there's that continued shift of liability to the district and away from the insurance company. So the one that you'll see out there is earthquake insurance. We have earthquake coverage. They're limiting that now to $25 million. Seems like a lot of money, but again, we have $170 million of property. We have a huge two-story high school. Think if we had a whatever seismic activity, which happens in the Midwest, fracking and other things, you know, what would the insurance consider a movement of the earth or a seismic activity that would be limited at $25 million? Again, rare, but this is what we're talking about, the extreme. So you need to know what that exposure is. They're only going to cover us for $25 million for that. Let's see, the other things in there, you know, there's a lot of things in the liability side that they're reducing coverage on, the professional services liability. You see the summaries in there, and again, they're public for everybody to see. It states right in there, this legally could be considered a reduction in coverage. Again, that's that shift as I describe it. Abuse and molestation, the things they talk in there under the umbrella package, they talk about negligent employment, negligent investigation, negligent supervision, failing to report to the proper authorities, or just failing to report. So there's exposure there and the things that they're taking stances on there. Other things that are a little more minor than that, like the auto glass, they're raising that up to $500. Something that's a little more significant, if you notice in the renewal package in there, any roof, and last year that was a big emphasis was on roofs, and we had to provide a lot of documentation. We spent a lot of money trying to keep our roofs up to date, which helps a lot of things from maintenance and other things. But insurance, if you don't take care of your roof, it's more likely to be damaged by a wind event. But again, our policy, any roof over 15 years old, they'll only insure for actual cash value. And there's also a cosmetic roof exclusion added. So this building's a metal building. Sunflower's roof is all metal. We got some other that are metal. So if there was a hail event and the roof is just dented up, but it's not leaking, they're not going to cover that. That's cosmetic. So it would have to be damaged and have actual issues rather than just like if your car is hail damaged. Cosmetic, they're not going to fix that on our roofs. So again, just things to keep in mind. Let's see. So again, I mentioned the increase because of all those factors, the $61,868. On that, we can make some deductible changes, and I added this in my final. You got this month 2 board reports from me, the preliminary and the final. Some of that came in late breaking, and so our current deductible, as I've noted in there, is $50,000, and it's per building, not per occurrence. So if we had a wind event, a hailstorm, whatever it was, that hit all 4 schools, we're going to pay $50,000 per school for any damage, the deductible. So it's per building, not per occurrence. They offered some deductible options at $100,000, wasn't significant, not even worth considering. $150,000 was only $5,000 savings, not worth considering. But they did offer a $250,000 deductible option, which again is a significant increase. But there's a $41,000 premium savings associated with that. And at that level, it is not per building, it is per occurrence. So I ran through a scenario in my board report as I interpreted it, I've sent this back to our agent, they concurred that my analysis is correct. So I think that is a very good offer to take that. If we had that and had to meet that deductible, we could pay that out of capital outlay, hence another reason why you want to have cash balances. But as it is right now, if we had a claim on all 4 schools, we're paying $200,000 anyway, because it's $50,000 each. And that's just saying the schools, not even counting if this building was damaged, or adult ed, or bus barn, the animal lab, anything else. So while $250,000 sounds like a lot, with that per occurrence, per event, not per building, I think it makes that an excellent option, especially with the savings of $41,000 in premium. The rule of thumb that our insurance company says, if you can recoup your costs in 5 years, you should do it. And over 5 years, that would save us $206,000. So even with $50,000 to $250,000, that's $200,000 increase, even though it's really not that significant, as I explained, the per building and per occurrence change. So I think that's something definitely we should consider, just to kind of help out with that overall increase, offsetting that $61,000 and change. So shifting a little bit to work comp, again, as I alluded to, there's the mod factor, which it looks back 3 years at your claims, the frequency and the severity of those claims. We're at a 1.57, just for the benefit and ease summary of that. 1.0 is kind of like par, that's where you want to be. Any one number, 1% of, if you're at 1.01, basically you're saying that means you're gonna pay a 1% premium. So we're at 1.57, so theoretically we're paying 57% more for work comp because of that experience factor. Some of that is just, some of the makeup of district and things that we're going to have high need students that sometimes are aggressive and violent, and they can result. Then there's the normal things, strains and falls and things, but there are some of those student caused incidents with staff as well. So if you look back over the history of the work comp, I mean, we had been much lower. And if you look back a few years, we were at 1.0. Our lowest was 0.65. So we're 2.5 times that now. If you look back at that premium, it's about 2.5 times. So back that year, we were 0.65. We paid about $51,000. Now we're going to pay $128,000 for our work comp insurance, which is a $32,496 increase. Again, a couple other carriers didn't want to quote it because of that mod and the premium, and they just think it's profitable, and they may not be wrong of recent history. So we do have a $2,500 deductible on that the district pays. You see that in the claims when those come through. That helps, and so that was a change we made many years ago that helped kind of get that mod rating down, because those we pay the deductible, they don't count toward that until they exceed $2,500. So the overall, the $61,868 in property, the $32,496 in work comp, that's a $94,364 increase. It's not great news. But with that other deductible option, we can save the $41,000 in change. I would recommend that, and our agent would concur with that. Also to keep in mind, we host a special ed co-op, so hence a lot of that with our staff comes from them. They actually pay half of that work comp. So if you factor that out, the district's part of that, they're going to pay about $16,000 of that $32,000 increase. So still, our cost is going up $78,000 before that deductible option. So then it would be about just under $37,000 increase. Better, but still significant.
And this main document where it has the highlighted, so for the total amounts being an increase of 21%, does that include the 50 per building or the 250?
No, that was before we got the deductible option. So that was just the overall.
So it could bring it down, instead of being like plus 21% to roughly plus 12 or 13% over last year's?
Yeah, if you factor that. Yeah, I didn't do that math, but correct, it would drop that down. And that kind of came in after I already had that put together, the deductible option. They did take a while, just if you read through that whole email chain that was in there, took a while to get that kind of finalized from EMC, not from LED Insurance, but from EMC, as the actual carrier.
How much is in the contingency fund currently?
Our contingency balance is $1.1 million even.
So that, if needed, part of that could cover the
Yeah,
budget.
definitely could. Now, I always point out that part of that is, and you see this in my budget review every year, which preview you'll get to hear much more from me in July and August. So, but part of that backs up the health insurance as well, because we're self-insured there. But definitely, that between contingency and capital outlay, that's where you would come up with any shortfalls or large deductibles that you would have to make. Primarily capital outlay, in my opinion, but the contingency could be used as well. Any other questions or information I can help with on that?
Motion to approve it with the $250,000 deductible option.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve it with the $250,000 deductible option. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. Yes. What now?
Who was the second? Sean.
Sean.
Thank you. And work comp, I kind of covered that, but that's the second motion item.
I motion to approve work comp.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve workers' comp renewal. All those in favor, please raise your hands. We've got 7 of us.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Jimmy. And then next up is to authorize superintendent and board clerk to make transfers and expenditures to complete the 2024-2025 budget.
Yeah, and this is an annual authorization we've done for the last many years, in lieu of having a special meeting that usually was very short and maybe not always well attended either. So this gives Matt and I the permission to make the changes, and then it's just like prior years, you'll see that closeout memo. It's going to look different this year under the new system, but it will be the similar concept. You'll see all the year snapshot, the cash balances, and all that's going to be part of the budget. So it's a good segue into what's to come in July and August. But this allows us to make the necessary year-end changes and things and get all that closed out by June 30th.
I motion to approve the authorization.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to authorize the superintendent and board clerk to make transfers and expenditures to complete the 2024-25 budget. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We've got 7.
We can start.
Madam President, I move that we go into executive session with Matt, consultation with our attorney, pursuant to attorney-client privilege in order to protect the privilege, and that we return to open session in this room at 7:53.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor? And we've got 7 of us. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn.
We all did.
Second.
All those in favor?
I'm out. See you.
Bye, Lee. Okay.
Hey,
All
did you-
all of us.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Did
oh,
you
all
keep
of
that
us.
clean copy, or do
thought
I
we
need to
did
give
that
it to you?
already.
Tomorrow.
All of us, I think, were in.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Hey, Michelle, you need to sign that
Yes,
one that's
I have-
sideways.
okay. I think I have a lot of papers to sign.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. So,
Oh, that's a new one, maybe.
yeah, so what I need is.